film coverage. And why is that related? Nobody thought in the 1960s that our government was purposely poisoning our troops, but we were. And when you look at even the Hudson River and the fact that GE had they had permits to discharge into water, we didn't think that they were poisoning the water. But look, we've had adverse effects, and now we're cleaning it up. I don't want to see this end up being the next major Agent Orange. So I want to see us, let's look at a robust regulatory process that ensures we safeguard the water and the air. And I have not seen that to date. So I'm looking for seeing what the governor brings forward. I will read that. Certainly we're a country that can do hard things. I get that. We certainly have we've proven that time and time again. But any rush at this point that doesn't learn from the mistakes that have been made is not wise, in my view.
And we've got to have accountability, too, as instead of having the government pay for this cleanup, or if necessary, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years down the line, like you're talking about with Agent Orange.
Absolutely accountability, but even how about forethought? We've had mistakes, wastewater issues, we've had this disclosure issue. It should be a no-brainer. They should have to disclose. So just a whole host of issues that have not been addressed yet. So I think it's premature at this point to give any kind of endorsement.
Congressman Chris Gibson, 2 Legions of Merit, 4 Bronze Stars, the Purple Heart, 4 combat tours in Iraq. On the Armed Service Committee, the military budget bloated or insufficient at this point?
Well, I think we overspend on national security. I think it starts from the fact that I think we need to think differently. You look at the 1950s, and we forged a bipartisan consensus at that time to address the Soviet Union. But I think that morphed into a belief that somehow we're the world's policemen, and we now have troops all over the world. And I don't think it's actually in our interest to do that when we overspend, clearly, as a result of that. I want us to think differently. We should be protecting our cherished way of life. Now, that doesn't mean I'm advocating for isolationism. No, I think we should lead with our ideas. You look at, even as a young country as we are, we have, and indeed, we have the longest standing stable constitution in the world right now. And countries want to be like us because of the way that we safeguard our civil liberties and our freedoms. So we should be leading with that. We should have a robust diplomacy that advocates for our goods and services, so we look for fair trading agreements across the world, always backed up by the deterrent of a strong military. But our land forces should be brought back to the United States of America. And I think that we can certainly protect this cherished way of life, and I think we can do it, we can be safer for less money.
And smarter.
Absolutely smarter. So, for example, just put a finer point on it. 4 brigade combat teams in Europe. What are they protecting there? I mean, seriously. I mean, it's been now, a couple generations. We are decades and decades beyond the Second World War, yet we still have 4 brigade combat teams in Europe. We should bring them home. And look, I mean, Iraq was hard. It was very, very hard. And after measures, we're home now, and we have accomplished limited objectives. Certainly Iraq is not going to be a Jeffersonian democracy, but it'll be, in my view, it'll be relatively friendly and relatively stable, and our troops are home. And I think we're in the final phase in Afghanistan. I think the president has the right plan there, that we're going to complete combat operations. We're already beginning the withdrawal there. My point on this is when our troops come home, let's learn from what happened. We can't afford to spend another decade doing these kind of endeavors. So, if we think differently, we can undergo comprehensive national security establishment reform. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about closer collaboration between intelligence and operations. I'm talking about bringing ground troops back home. I'm talking about reducing the number of headquarters that are currently all over the world. We have these combatant commands, European Command, African Command, Pacific Command. We evidence an empire. Look, I know that we pass a test that says we're a republic, but you look at our actions, and we're all over the world at this point, and we create unintended consequences attendant to that. And I think if we think differently and we reorganize our national security establishment, we'll be safer, and it'll cost much less money.
When our troops return from overseas, is there money to treat them better? Are veterans coming home getting good health care, psychological care?
Look, it's going to be an ongoing effort. We have increased the money, even in this period where we're looking to do generally across the country, doing more with less. We've increased the money. for the Veterans Administration to make sure that we get treatment to our veterans. Yet we still find some veterans suffering horribly so. I mean, look, the story of our veterans, it's a mixed story. On the one hand, there are some veterans who have come home that have just absolutely excelled, that have started new businesses. They're already rising to the top of any echelon in society. Very proud of them. And there are veterans falling through the cracks. And so, our office, we're working on volunteers that work this issue. I'm also working on an initiative with Peter Welch, again, my friend from Vermont. We're working on this Yellow Ribbon program, which actually looks to take a vehicle that we think is working pretty well, which is a program for the National Guard that actually has very much hands-on. It knocks on doors, it goes in, it explains the programs that are there for mental health, for education, for jobs training, and looking to bring that kind of vehicle for returning servicemen and women who come back from the active duty force. And what we found is that there are a lot of well-meaning and hard-working folks who are doing veterans issues now. They lack situation awareness. They often don't know our servicemen and women are coming back to the communities. That's one of the initiatives we're looking to tie together closely with the Department of Defense and Department of Veterans Affairs. So, look, there's also, while all this governmental action is going on, there's a lot of charitable work being done. There's just great efforts that are being made all throughout upstate New York that I have witnessed. Individuals who are donating their time, their money, organizations that are helping with homeless veterans, and I think even this radio station reported we have increased funding for homeless veterans in the last few weeks, and I think that that's important. So, look, this is an ongoing effort, as I said. This will not be solved in one day, in 1 month. In fact, it's really going to be quite, this is one of the reasons why I'm the author of a bill called the War Powers Reform Act. And what I find, it's basically changing the way our country goes to war. The founders intended for the separate institutions to share power, so this would be the most solemn decision, among the most solemn decisions that we make. But yet, especially since the advent of the nuclear age, we've consolidated war powers into the executive. And presidents from both parties have taken our troops into combat without the consent of the governed. And I would tell you that I would ask everyone to look up this bill. It's H.R. 3709, the War Powers Reform Act.